Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, for another Elite 11 team reveal. We've got Craig back on the channel for the first time in what seems like forever. He's having a great season, so I'm looking forward to getting his thoughts. We're going to be discussing what to do with Erling Haaland, all of the stats going into Game Week 9 and looking back to Game Week 8. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel, and Craig, great to have you back on, mate. It's been ages. How's your season working out, my friend?
It's going really well, Tom. Thanks for having me back on. It's been a while. It was pre-season when I was last on. I think it was just before Game Week 1, if I recall correctly.
Wow, really?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, because I seem to recall saying that I was looking ahead to triple captaining Haaland in Game Week 2,
Okay.
and I did it. And everything was going great at that point. So and it's gone a wee bit downhill since, but I mean, still pretty decent score, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the season so far.
Yeah, definitely. You can see that, mate, swimming right around that kind of 140 odd K mark at this stage of the season is really strong position. So looking back in that case, Craig, because we've not had you on, is there anything that's kind of happened in the first 8 game week period which has surprised you and has kind of gone against what you were expecting? How it went? Obviously, the accruing of transfers is new. How are you kind of finding how the season's panning out? Is it a crapshoot? Is it going as you expected? How would you kind of sum things up?
Right, let's start with the last one. It's not going as expected. Not at all. I don't actually feel like I've got a whole lot right. I think I've got two things right since
Okay,
the
go
start
on.
of the season, which I'm pretty happy with. Apart from that, everything's been a bit of a crapshoot, as you call it. So I started with Salah and Haaland at the start, and that works out great for the first 3 weeks. I triple captained Haaland in 2 game week, so that works out really well. Obviously, and I'm super happy with that. But since then, well, I haven't done a lot since then because up until last week, I'd accumulated, excuse me, 4 free transfers, wildcarded in 6, but rolled over a few transfers, and they were starting to burn a hole in my pocket. So last week, I spent a few, not very wisely,
Yep.
as it turns out. And I've been struggling really to get my head around the new value of a free transfer, struggling to get my head around. It feels to me, I'm not the huge stats guy, but it feels to me this year that the stats are, that they're so heavily weighted on last year's performance, and this year's performances are quite different, it seems, particularly from certain individuals. So it's, I'm stumbling a wee bit. I mean, the score's fine, I'm doing
Yeah.
okay, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel like I'm completely in control. It
No,
feels a wee bit like a roller coaster right now. So,
I get it.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well summed up, and I think a lot of managers are feeling the same way as well. Not just the guys who have had on with the Mark and Andrew, Corey, etc. But more widely, people are still sort of saying, still working our way through this, aren't we? And we're only 8 game weeks in, but score wise is looking super impressive, Craig. So that's something to be holding on to. I reckon we should take a look, Craig, at how your game week 8 played out. You mentioned you had bunch of free transfers going into Game Week 8. So let's take a look at how you used them and how many points you managed to pick up. Okay, mate. So we're going to do this sort of piece by piece. We're going to start with a goalkeeper reveal here, which I know the scores because I was preparing for this. That's a nice way to start, isn't it, mate? Mr. Sal's in goal there, the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. Nice cheap option with an 11-point haul.
Yeah.
Got to be super happy with how that's working out, mate.
I'm ridiculously happy. I mean, I was one of those who got, I think many did, stumbled on that wild card Saturday morning with the is Raya fit, is Raya not fit,
Oh, yeah, of
and I seem
course.
to think you and I have talked about this chat before, but I was wise enough to bring in Edison again. Um,
His name does
yeah,
seem to
we seem
follow
to
you
talk
around,
about it quite
Craig.
a
It
lot. I
does.
mean, I fucking hate the
Yeah.
guy as a fantasy football asset, but there we go. He's like the bar of soap in a prison film. You know exactly what's going to happen when you bend down to pick it up, and yet you keep on doing it. So at least I do.
That's
So
quite an analogy. Yeah.
excuse me. So it's I took the chance to move him out this week. I'm not at all
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
not at all blown away by, well, nobody is, by City this season, particularly not defensively. They always have had a goal against in them, despite incredibly low XGC numbers. And I just had enough. It's just such a drag owning him, and I needed some money from somewhere, so Sells came in for him and delivered, I think, more points in 1 week than Edison had delivered in 5. So that was great.
Yeah, it's great, and a shout out for the Forest defence collectively, right, Craig? I mean, you and I have talked. I've certainly talked to Mark as well, and they were appearing at sort of positively as a team defensive unit at the back end of last season. That's continued right into the start of the season.
Absolutely.
So they look viable. Let's take a look at the rest of the defence and how they're looking up. So you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold there, Gabriel obviously, and Lewis. So you've gone sort of premium teams there, Craig. And we can look at the bench there as well, Mikalenko and Greaves respectively as well. How are you feeling about that defensive contingent ongoing with some serious investment there with Trent and Gabriel? What's your thoughts on your defensive setup so far?
I think Trent, I still feel that he's a gift, and that's what I felt at the start of the season. I think the price is still too low. Obviously, they've got a few fixtures coming up which are a bit funky, so maybe he's not going to be getting a clean sheet and an assist and 3 bonus points. But he's had a few of those, and I'm going to do whatever I can to keep him going forwards.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think there are too many premium defenders who are delivering right now, or any defenders who are delivering right now, apart from Forest, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
So he stays for now. I'm really happy with him. Gabriel, I suppose we're going to get the transfer plans at some point during the chat. So he's on thin ice, short term at least. Lewis kind of goes back to the point about Edison. I don't feel, when I'm watching them, nor when I'm looking at the numbers afterwards, that they're a particularly safe bet these days for a clean sheet. But the attraction of Lewis is, one, he's dirt cheap, or he was at least dirt cheap when I bought him, and secondly, he does have that attacking potential on his locker.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this week it was Guardiola who chipped in, but another week it could quite easily be Lewis. So for that price, I'm happy to go with him over another 4.5. So
makes sense.
I don't really see him as a premium defender. I see him as a 4.5 who's got that added bonus of one of these days City will smash somebody 5-0 and he might be chipping in with a few attacking points. So that's, for me, he's just
I like it, and
bonus option.
And Mikalenko on the bench there, obviously returning from injury in game week 8 after that missing out previously. And they've I think unbeaten in 4 now as well. So it looks like a nice route into an improving Everton defence. Would we go that far, or do we still not trust them just yet?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I don't trust them as much as others, but I do trust them. Put it this way: the form they had at the start of the season was not representative of what you're going to get from Everton going forwards. So whether they're the best defence, no, probably not. But I think at that price that we probably all bought him at, which was 4.3. What do you want? It's fine.
Absolutely.
He's going to deliver some weeks not.
Here. Cool. Let's look on to the midfield then, mate. So we're looking here at Mbumo, Foden, Rodgers, and Semenyo, who was massively stats padding, wasn't he, in terms of everything other than scoring or assisting or gaining any FPL points, but everything else he was lighting things up. Let's talk around this midfield selection. Obviously, Saka missed out because of the injury that kept him out of the squad altogether at Bournemouth. How are you feeling about your midfield 5, Craig? Let's start with Foden. Let's start with Phil Foden.
Okay. So I brought Foden in this week. I got a boner for Phil, and I really wanted to bring him in for these games last week against Wolves, and this week against, who was it this week? Southampton, isn't it, this week?
That's right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that seemed too good to be true, and he just didn't factor Pep into the equation. So I really, really hadn't expected to see him on the bench again this week. So that's... Okay, he chipped in with an assist for the John Stones goal, fine. But it feels a bit of a sucker punch. But at the same time, I wasn't considering Son, unlike the cartel and what have you. It wasn't an option for me. It really hadn't. I'd looked at Johnson. I wasn't really hot on Johnson. I'd looked at Maddison. If I was gone for somebody from Spurs, it would have been Maddison. But I didn't get that far in my process of thought because I much preferred the idea of Foden. So Foden came in.
Yeah, which makes total sense.
For Luis Diaz, I think it was. So Diaz and Diaz didn't play. So that was fine.
I mean, you would have thought as well, Craig, with De Bruyne's continued absence as well, and we'll kind of come on and talk at length about Haaland and the seeming lack of creativity that's massively impacting on his output, that Foden would have been as close to a lock in that Guardiola midfielder and attack as anyone.
That's certainly how I saw it.
Yeah,
But
I
obviously,
understand it. So, Mbumo, obviously he's had a cracking start to the season. Man United haven't been impressive, have they? So I guess would have been confident with the game at Old Trafford, but one of the few games where they didn't look so impressive. What are your feelings about Mbumo on going and Brentford as an attacking option?
yeah, but I think it's been a few games now where at least I've only seen really short highlights, so it's not an eye test at all. But from the numbers side, he hasn't really been showing any leg. There hasn't really been a great deal of either expected goals or expected assists for the last few, and it's got me a little bit worried. I mean, as I kind of intimated at the start, I'm not trusting all the numbers I'm seeing, at least in terms of the algorithms and FPL review and yours on the fantasy football fix side. I mean, they're based upon historic data, and I'm seeing. I just feel like there's some anomalies between the historic data and the way players are performing right now. And Boomer is one of those top of my list of. I mean, going forward, he should be an absolute lock, and I think most people, if you haven't got him, you really should. Why not? But at the same time, I don't know. I don't have any confidence about it yet. Can't quite tell you why. It's just a gut feeling, but
and it's at that price point, Craig, isn't it? Where there are always going to be compelling options week to week in that kind of, I don't know what we'd call it, sort of mid to upper mid price bracket. There's always someone of interest. It seems game week to game week, so it's quite easy to get itchy feet, isn't it, with players like that?
It is. But I mean, I made these 3 moves this week, and that was easy because I had 4 frees. But the ones you really want to be moving around, at least the ones I want to be moving around, ideally, are the big hitting guys.
Okay.
I don't mind using transfers on the Son. Well, I didn't, but the Sons, the Sakas, the Salahs, the Fodens,
your
premiums, and so on. But I don't see him in that bracket, so I don't really want to use transfers on a Semenyo or a Mbolo kind of player. You want to just pick them and leave them there. But yeah, it's only 2 weeks since I wildcarded, but I've got to just
one to watch,
an itch to be scratched. So, one to watch. I think,
All right, well, we're going to come on and look at Game Week 9 in a moment, so we'll talk around transfer plans then. But in terms of your more budget enabling, and we'll talk around the Saka plan as well in the Game Week 9 slide as well, Craig, so we'll leave him for now. But Rodgers, the return, Villa looked good, impressive away win at Fulham, and Semenyo, as I say, sort of lit things up other than from actually returning FPL points. Pretty comfortable with those 2 budget options, Craig? They feel like the popular duo?
Yeah, certainly Rodgers. I'm struggling to think of anybody who's better value at that price. On my wild card, there was a few hours there where I was looking at Carvalho from Brentford. But I feel reasonably happy with that choice of Rodgers, and I think most people do. I needed a cheap, I call him 7th or 8th or 4th or 5th midfielder, and I can't see anybody better. I'm not saying he's going to turn into a 150 point guy this season, not at all, but it seems it's a gift.
I like him. So I like how he plays, man. It's fun to watch him. It's sort of fun to see an attacker dribbling and taking people on and willing to shoot and stuff. It's a bit of a throwback to yesteryear, and he seems like a viable FPL option, doesn't he? Especially at that price. So, I understand that one. Let's look at these forwards there, mate. So we're going to come on and talk at length about Haaland, so I don't think we need to belabour that captaincy blank there, but I am interested in your read on Dominic Solanke. Obviously, in a lot of people's teams, Spurs have got a really handsome run of fixtures, haven't they? And they thrashed a pitiful West Ham, which it's always difficult for me to watch. But he didn't impress, right? And seemed to be one of the few attacking options in that game who wasn't presenting much of a case. What's your read on Solanke?
I thought he played okay, but just not as an FPL okay.
Yeah.
And again, I've only seen the highlights, not the full game. But from what I saw, he seemed to work well with the team. He brought the others into play, which is fantastic. Just from an FPL point of view, it's just like stop passing the bloody ball.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit like that. I mean, the week before he was better, but there's been a few of those games like that this season where he seemed like this foil at the top of the formation for bringing the others in, which is fine. And maybe I should have given that more thought before I brought him in this week, because I'm really already regretting it. I mean, they have a really nice game week 11, but that's still a few weeks away. But that one feels like a mistake. Foden when on the pitch is always going to be dangerous. Solanke, I can't quite say the same just after 1 week of being an owner. So I'm feeling a little bit of buyer's regret there.
Yeah, no, and I should qualify that. I thought we played well as well. It's just FPL relevant in terms of what you want to see there in terms of shot volume and the metrics like that. Let's talk around DCL. We mentioned Everton improving. I think it's 4 unbeaten now in the league, and he remains their forward, doesn't he? But what's going on with this guy, Craig? What's your take on him? He's great value in theory. Is it just stay the course with him because of his price? What's your take?
I think unless you have transfers to burn, I would very much doubt you've got transfers to burn with game week 12 coming thick and fast. By which I mean to say a fixture swing.
Massive fixture swing.
Then I'm a little bit sorry to say I'm stuck with the useless bastard. It really doesn't feel like I've made the right choice there. I think he felt like the right choice at the time, but he really hasn't posted any decent numbers or any really eye-catching performances, or he hasn't really looked like, it doesn't like Semenyo, where at least you think, well, one of those could maybe have gone in. It really is so little from Calvert-Lewin, but it feels a wee bit like I'm stuck with him for a while anyway. But as long as I can restructure that he becomes my first sub and not a player I'm depending on in the first 11, then okay, fine, move on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good segue actually, Craig. So I think with that in mind, let's take a look at how your bus team is shaping up ahead of Game Week 9. Okay, so you sort of alluded to it there, Craig. Let's get straight into the bench here, actually. So you've decided here, we want to talk around what your plans are with Saka injury news pending, but the idea to bench Calvert-Lewin and Mykolenko for a home game against Fulham sort of stood out to me here, Craig, because I think we've just talked around them looking slightly more encouraging. Is it just the fact that the rest of your team is strong enough to warrant that, or do you just say Everton are actually not a team we should be trusting from an FPL perspective at the moment?
Let's look at the defence. Start with the defence. First of all, we've got Trent, and he's going nowhere.
Oh, of course.
That for me it's got 0-0 written all over it, and even if it wasn't, I wouldn't bench Trent. There's Lewis home to Southampton, assuming he plays, and then there's Gabriel, who may or may not be in my team come Saturday morning. So it might be. Let's not get. I'm not sure when we get into plans, but
planning now. You've got 2 free transfers, right?
Yeah. So it could well be Saka. It certainly could be Saka to Parma. But I haven't got the money, so I need a make weight, and Gabriel could be the one. Will probably be the one. It would be ideal if it was Calvert-Lewin, but I haven't got the money to go to Jimenez from Fulham and Parma, so somebody else has to make way. So it's going to be, well, who would it be? There's 4 candidates. It's going to be Gabriel, Semenyo, Solanke, or Mbeumo. And I'm tempted to go for I'll lose a few quid on Gabriel by selling him, but I don't mind.
Feels like an interesting time. Sorry.
I think I'll probably go for Gabriel to probably Ait Nouri.
Okay.
Who I would bench this week, and then put Mykolenko in. And then Ait Nouri comes and starts delivering the points from game week 10 when their fixture run starts going really fantastic.
I like it. I like the player as well, Ait Nouri, and Wolves. They're hard done by again, weren't they? Depending on how you look at it in the Man City game, but I like him as an FPL option. Really interesting. So interesting that we're talking about moving away from Arsenal as a double move. Then with these, they've got 3 rough fixtures now, right? With over the next 3, and off the back of a defeat against Bournemouth. Do we think actually that strategically is what you'd be recommending? Like, actually, Arsenal are a bit of a swerve for now?
I mean, No, I wouldn't recommend it insofar as it's just where I'm at right now. And it goes hand in hand with some of the other priorities I've got for the next few weeks, which I guess we're going to get onto.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I still think Arsenal, I mean, if you look at the numbers and it's all completely skewed because they've had 3 red cards, I still think they're hands down the best defence in the league.
Okay.
So there's nothing to say that they couldn't get 3 clean sheets or 3 decent results in the next 3 games. It's just much more unlikely than it's likely. But from game week 12, we're all going to want them back. 2, probably 3, moving on toward Christmas. So it's just a temporary switching around. So Saka will leave this week for Palmer.
Yeah.
For the very simple reason that I'm quite terrified of not having Palmer. I'm not going to try and give you some stats or any kind of sophisticated argument.
Well, we'll come on to some in a minute, right? When we'll see his name up in lights, won't we? Yeah.
And then Gabriel will come back in 12 along with Saka. I say Gabriel. It could also be, I've forgotten his name, the left back, the Italian guy.
Yeah, me too. I know who you mean. Yeah, the new signing. I know who you mean.
Yeah.
Calafiore. Well remembered. Yeah. So yeah, an Arsenal defensive option becomes viable from 12. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So it's just moving things around right now to chase some of the players who've got the really big weeks coming up. So that's So Palmer could be any week. That's the fear.
Yeah.
Game week 10 is Salah and Trent. That's their time to shine. Game week 11, we've got Son and drumroll Solanke. And then 12, well, it's wide open. Then it's just Arsenal and Chelsea all the way to Christmas.
Just
with some City games thrown in.
Craig, did you have any thoughts on? You mentioned Salah there as well. I thought another very impressive performance. They just take them as read now, and Salah sort of gives these performances. You know, it's been for so long from an FPL perspective. Have you got any designs on trying to squeeze him back into the team, even if it would be as part of a hit, or how does?
No, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What's the plan then? Let's talk around the Mo Salah plan for you.
Well, okay. You can't have them all.
No,
true.
We've
been saying this since the start of the season. They've priced it absolutely fantastically this season.
Here.
I think.
Oh, me too. Definitely.
So I'm not moving Trent. I want Saka. I want Palmer. If I want Salah, then someone's going to have to give.
I see.
I think we all know who it is.
Well,
so
like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so it's just a question of and the only thing I'm trying to make. I haven't really got so far down to planning out on my post-it notes like I normally do, but I've got a rough idea in my head that who will go and come in which order. And as long as I've got a route, as long as I've got a -4 back to Haaland, you know what I mean? If Salah breaks his knee and then Haaland scores a hat-trick, it's like, oh my God. As long as I can just with one move or 2 moves with a -4 get Haaland back the next week, fine. I'm happy to take that risk. That's kind of where I feel right now, because City just don't. I'm not seeing it when I'm watching them. I don't see a cohesive unit. I don't see. It's like what's that cartoon? What do you call that in English? Is it Find Wally or Where's Wally?
Where's Wally?
You know, it's like it's like the easiest game in the world. You know, for Manchester City. Where's Haaland? It's like he's just stood there doing nothing, waiting for someone to pass him the ball.
This is a spoiler for us,
which they can't seem to work out how to do. But I mean, it's
just final thing on the transfer plans ahead of game week 9. So you've got the 2. You're expecting Palmer to come in for Saka, and there being a make weight. Corey in the Slack channel was making the point as to Gabriel having a bit of goal threat there. Is there any thought, you mentioned you're not being enamoured by Solanke, to actually do something with him to make funds? And if so, what would that double move look like, Craig?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I think, in all honesty, it's like what is it from Pulp Fiction? That's just pride fucking with you, Butch. You know, that I've just bought Solanke in. And I feel like a bit of a mug if I take him out the week after. But you're probably right that, in all honesty, looking ahead for where I want to be, then it probably saves me a transfer going forward sometime in the next 5 weeks if I just sell Solanke now. If I sell Solanke now, I think there will only be 2. And again, it's not for a direct replacement. It's for how much money I would need to raise in the weeks ahead. So it's only 2 choices. It would be Jimenez or it would be Cunha. If João Pedro was fit, I would consider him. But I'm pretty sure he comes in for Calvert-Lewin as soon as he's fit. So Cunha or Jimenez would be my move for Solanke, which would give me plenty of money in the bank to play around with the other moves I have planned.
You got a expectation which way you're leaning, which one will be the make weight to enable Palmer to come in, Craig? Is it more likely to be Gabriel or Solanke? Which way are you leaning at the minute?
Well, it was Gabriel 1 minute ago, but what do you think, Tom?
I just thought when you mentioned about the thought you're going to be bringing an Arsenal defender back in 12, my financial analyst background to me suggests that you might want to retain someone who you've already got money in. So I'd probably be leaning more towards Solanke as the option, particularly as I love Raul Jimenez and I'm super impressed by him. And that is actually a lovely little segue onto our stats roundup for the last 4 game weeks, guys. So this is probably my favourite part of the show, guys, that we've been bringing in for the last few videos, actually. And this is just a reminder, it's looking at the last 4 game weeks. Stats are, average per game, and they need to have played at least 180 minutes over the course of the season. So this is what we're looking at here. And there are some interesting names here, aren't they, Craig? When we were talking off camera, and some stunning revelations in the expected goals conceded from a team metric. I had to run them twice. You asked my boss whether or not I'd gone crazy because West Ham are in there. So that doesn't feel right. But what's leaping out to you here, mate? I mean, you've talked around Palmer already. The stats seem to be backing that up, right? He's looking like a tremendous FPL asset, even with the good pricing that you mentioned as well.
Yeah, I mean, for the goals and assists, there's no surprises in the goals. That kind of, well, a little bit with Solanke, given the narrative we just had. But it's the last 4, and I've only been paying attention for the last 2, really. So that's perhaps where it comes from. I mean, Jimenez being up in 4th. I mean, Jimenez, appears in different places here. I mean, he seems. I mean, he's certainly in the purple patch.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So it seems to be the right time to hit on him.
Yeah, I agree.
The other one, which really jumped out, is Kudos.
Yeah.
And okay, he's suspended now, silly boy. But I think most of us would have been looking at West Ham assets in a few weeks' time, and not right now. But every time I see West Ham mentioned, everyone's always saying, "Oh, Bowen's the only asset." I'm not decrying Bowen as an FPL asset. Quite the opposite. Obviously got a huge and long pedigree. But Kudus' numbers, man. I mean, they're really interesting. Obviously, they're going to go south in a rush now that he's not going to be on the pitch.
Yeah.
But it's worth remembering for when he comes back from suspension.
It is, mate.
And when the pictures pick up, I mean, he's really interested me with these numbers here.
Yeah, and he should be, right? I mean, he was predicted to do well this season as well. I think it was either 15 or 16 goal involvements last season as well. He's a terrific player. I love watching him play, and it does translate to FPL points, and that we've seen that over a period now. But as you say, he's gone and got himself sent off. That rules him out of the game against Man United in game week 9 and out of people's thinking for this period. But a nice shout ahead of fixture change down the line as well, for sure. Yeah, I mean, someone who's conspicuous by their absence here, Craig, is Haaland, right? Expected goals. I mentioned last video with Andrew that he was not there, but he was appearing in the shots in the box volume, so we were kind of a bit more relaxed about things. He's disappeared from there, and actually I took the time to look, and he has, over the last 4 game weeks, and we'll come on to look at him in a minute, but over the last 4, his expected goals per 90 is the equivalent of Lisandro Martinez of Man United centre-half fame. So that sort of tells you where he's at, right? So, I mean, we're going to get onto Haaland in detail in a minute, but just outside of that, is there anybody else that's on this screen here that's you're sort of thinking they present an interesting case? Saka's still super high. I mean, if he was deemed fit, for example, would you say there's a case to keep him ahead of your Palmer move, or is Palmer still just
I think the fixtures they've got are just too
ropey,
too tight to not take a chance on Salah or Son or Palmer in those 3 weeks. And so I haven't really made that much money on him. I don't think. I was just checking yesterday. It isn't like Gabriel, where I've got quite a bit tied up, For me, that's straight. I think that the ceiling is so high on the other players at a period where his ceiling is going to be relatively lower than what it is. Then I feel intensely relaxed about moving him out going forwards.
Understood, mate. Yeah.
So yeah, that's not an issue for me there at all. You've got me really cooking now on this Solanke thing. I can't get it out of my head.
Well, it's interesting. I wasn't expecting to see him in the expected goals there as well. So maybe my enthusiasm to ditch him has sort of been offset by that a little bit. So
no, but it's a fair point.
It's muddied the water, hasn't it? Let's just talk real quickly on the expected goals conceded. Some funny team names in there, right? Spurs, Bournemouth, West Ham, Villa, and Fulham, respectively, impressing over the last 4 from that particular metric. Teams there in terms of budget-friendly options, do you think they represent a route into freeing up those precious funds, Craig? Any team that you think, they've got some FPL options I'd be interested in?
Yeah, 2 of them, but funnily enough, not the first 3.
Okay.
So Villa and Fulham have been a little bit on my radar in terms of this money-finding exercise I'm going through in the weeks ahead.
Yeah.
Villa, I still think he didn't play this weekend, which was a bit cheeky because I think Emery gave the indication that he would play, but whatever. I think Konsa, I had him from the start of the season. I still think he's the standout choice in their defence. Fulham, I had Robinson from the start, and I seem to think he picked up 1 return in the second week or something.
Yeah, he started
His numbers are actually, his attacking numbers are really, really poor. I know his heat map looks like a thing of beauty. But his end product is really, really poor. So I think I know Corey's got the hots for him. Is Joachim Anderson from Fulham, who's, unless he's gone up in price, he was 4.3 earlier in the week. So that seems, if Robinson is all fart and no poop, then I think you may as well just save the money and go for Anderson.
Yeah, like
who can also be a set piece threat. So those 2 are the ones I would go for from those 2. West Ham fixtures, I'm not going there for now. But more than happy to look at them 13, 14 onwards. Spurs.
Yeah, I found that peculiar to find them there as well. I mean, Pedro Porro's the name that leaps out from when we've talked historically about them, but pay a bit more for him. What's your read on Tottenham as FPL defensive options?
I mean, I'm absolutely gobsmacked to see them at the top of this list. Absolutely blown away. Porro, I don't find to be anywhere near as interesting an option as he was last season, even though I didn't own him that much last season. But, his offset pieces, he's getting forward, but not in the same way as he was last season. And they look more fragile to my mind. Oh, maybe not more fragile, but they still look fragile. They still look like they've got a crazy capitulation in them. I didn't see the game, but I listened to the Brighton game.
That famous second half.
Yeah. I had that on 5. I was back in the UK for the first time in a while, so I had that in 5 Live on a long drive down from Scotland, and that was quite entertaining listening to it being described in audio.
I bet.
I think they've all. It's always my gut feeling, and it's not fair because it's not statistically based; it's emotionally based. But I always feel they've got that stupid banana peel slip up in them. So I'm looking at that 1.02 and shaking my head. And I'm not tempted to go there. And if I was, it wouldn't be Porro. It would be probably one of the 2 centre backs.
Yeah, Van der Ven, someone like that.
Van der Ven or Romero. Yeah.
I see.
So, but I'm not. I mean, it's going back to my plans. If I don't, Michael Lenko, Everton, they still have. And okay, they're not on that table. I'm curious if they're 6th, but. They're not on the table, but their fixtures are solid going forward, and they rotate really well with Wolves.
Interesting. Okay, nice.
So if I brought in Nuri, I can forget all about Greaves, injured or not, and I'm pretty much covered in defence. So if I start with, my
your Trent,
Lewis, and Lewis. I've got some cover there. I mean, and Lewis again. It's not to say he'll stay forever, but I'm not concerned about him. No. But it doesn't feel like I'm going to go near a Spurs defender anytime soon.
I understand that. I understand that, mate.
But as with you, I looked at these numbers, it's like, well, that completely defies my expectations from looking at highlights and reading the reports and the rest of it.
I thought I'd filtered the table in the wrong direction when I was sorting it out.
That's what I thought when I first read it. That's exactly what I was saying to you. I was like, this must be. Going back to one thing we mentioned before, by the way, I'm just pointing at the name, I shouldn't do that. Havertz, you going back to the who would I want? I sold Havertz this week to get Solanke, and that really was on pain of death. I really, really didn't feel comfortable selling Havertz. Okay, he didn't return. But I think he's the magic ingredient at Arsenal, because okay, there'll be a few who don't sell him right now, but come game week 12, everybody who plays FPL properly is going to have Saka. It's completely irrelevant having Saka. Everyone's going to have him. Gabriel, Saliba, Raya, one of those three people will have in defence. It's the third player. It's the third Arsenal one who's the differential, who's the one who can help you out a wee bit. And when I had him since the wildcard, then I was amazed how lowly owned he was compared to how good his numbers were. And him, I would really like to find a way to get back. And that's also why I keep referring to, I want to keep some money, try and get some lower priced options to leave me money in game week 12 to bring him in for the plan was for Solanke.
Makes sense.
Let's see how that goes. But no, Havertz really, really appeals.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to perform. I think he's always going to slightly underperform his numbers, but still, when his numbers are that high,
do you know what? Yeah.
And he's that regular a starter, then I'm fine with that.
I mean, last week or the last time we had a video that Andrew was on, he'd done this amazing analysis on Kai Havertz and sort of looking before and after the Ødegaard injury. And it was really interesting to me. Like he pulled that. Right. I'm glad you saw that as well, because it wasn't information I'd been privy to before, and it was like, actually this guy's just a great FPL asset with or without Ødegaard. Doesn't seem to make an option, make a difference rather. So ahead of those fixtures that you mentioned, Craig, it's worth bearing that in mind, guys, to plan to look to accommodate him in your front three. Speaking of front three, let's move on. We've finally got round to the Erling Haaland section of the video. So let's take a look at how Erling Haaland's numbers have fallen off a cliff. Okay, so I'm expecting that pretty much everyone watching this video, probably everyone watching this video actually, owns Erling Haaland. And everyone is pissed off with what they are seeing from this geezer. Game weeks 1 through 5 couldn't have been more happy, right? And then game weeks 6 through 8. Look at those numbers drop off, and look at our average attacking radar per 90 minutes on the right hand side. It's dreadful, isn't it, Craig? It's Rodri is out, KDB is out, Foden's not being picked. This geezer's useless, isn't he? What's the crack here? Dare we sell him ahead of a home game against Southampton?
I'm not selling him this week. But it isn't to say, well, let's see. My plan is to sell him in 9. I don't see a home game against Southampton as a particularly useful barometer of how well City are playing. I mean, this is the one team I have spent a bit of time watching more than the others, and I'm just not in the least bit impressed right now. It's not to say it could all click one day and he could score 4 goals again, and
of course he could, definitely.
And there we go. It's always the risk, but the problem is that these numbers, as damning as they are, that I don't find them particularly damning of Haaland. I find them damning of the way that City are playing.
Yeah.
Because the whole team is built around that, give him the chances and you put them away, but they're just not being in any way, shape, or form creative or managing to break down or get the ball through to him in any interesting positions. It's not that he's shanking them all into Rosette. It's he's just not getting the chances that he was before. And please don't ask me to put my finger on the hows and the whys. I'm not that kind
it doesn't matter, right? To
football brain, but it's just, to my eye, it's just not even close to working right now. I'm not saying something's completely wrong in the kind of Manchester United way of something being rotten to the core, but it's it's not a question of not clicking. It's just not at all working right now, and I can't quite. Maybe KDB comes back this week, and maybe that changes it altogether. But
possibly,
it's just, I find other things just bizarre, like you were saying yourself, that Foden didn't come back into a team which is struggling for creativity. It's just really, I can't quite get my head around it, and he's too expensive to drag.
Yeah.
So he's got 1 week against Southampton, and then as the plan goes, he's toast, and I'll spread the money around
let's
as
do
long as
some
I have
scenario planning.
as long as I have that
Yeah.
-4. Yeah.
Let's do some scenario planning then, Craig. Let's say he does impress. Let's say it's a Kevin De Bruyne back into the team, and it's a brace minimum, right, for Haaland. You retain him at that point ahead after game week 9, or is he going to be your mechanism to get to Mo Salah, irrespective of how this kind of free hit against Southampton at home goes in game week 9?
Yeah, it's a fair question.
Difficult one,
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'd be more interested in seeing how did they play, but again, I mean, I don't know how Martin's going to line them up. Southampton against City, I'm not expecting a great deal.
No.
But if City really were to impress, how much weight could you really put upon it? Is my point. It's more the fact the last 3 games they've stank.
Yeah.
From a creative point of view and working the ball through to him. So I feel reasonably comfortable going there, not least of which because the fixtures are just better. So 10, I would have Salah as my captain. He would be the standout captain that week. 11, I would have Son. That would be my standout captain that week. 12, it would be Salah or Palmer. It's a while until Haaland becomes that kind of 2 expected points per game standout more than the other players.
Yeah.
So I think I feel like I can take the chance and spread that money. But it's a fair point. I mean, it could easily be I'm drenched in sweat on the Saturday morning of game week 10, my finger wavering over the mouse key, not quite sure whether to do it. But right now, it feels like it's the right time to jump off.
It does, right?
Yeah.
And like you say, that putting aside the why, if you're just looking at the what here, it's how can you justify this amount of investment on someone with these numbers? It feels like a tough ask
when the others are performing.
Yeah, exactly. When there are very viable options with prolonged FPL pedigree that you can, you can rely upon. Interesting, mate. Cool. That's been fascinating. I think it's been interesting to look at actually seeing how stark this drop off is in relation to his performance going weeks 1 through 5 after and the period that's followed 6 through 8. All right, mate. Let's just wrap this up. We've gone over 40 minutes, so I do just want to say though, transfer plans, gun to your head. You had to make them tonight. What are we doing ahead of game week 9?
Gabriel to Nuri and Saka to Palmer.
I like it. I'll see whether or not you come round to the Solanke way of thinking when game week 9 actually rolls around and people can follow your thoughts. Of course, by subscribing over on fantasyfootballfix.com and following the thoughts of all of our elite managers. I encourage you to do that if you haven't already. Craig, been absolutely awesome to get you back on. Always love chatting to you. I'm sure the viewers have done as well. Anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap things up?
No, 40 minutes, mate. Let's move on. That's enough.
Let's wrap it up.
Viewers.
Cool, and we'll get you back on super soon, mate, to find out how things are progressing. But well done on the start of the season. Guys, do please smash a like on the video on your way out. Do leave a comment down below for Craig ahead of Game Week 9. And do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.